Thank you very, very much, everyone. So let's get started. Again, Terri is first to speak, and she's joining us from Northfield in Atlantic County. Please welcome Terri Reese.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. So, last month was Women's History Month, where we recognized the achievements of women whose contributions were often overlooked in their own lifetimes. For generations, women have built businesses, made discoveries, led movements, and strengthened their communities. Yet their ideas were dismissed, their work credited to others, and often their leadership minimized. And even today, women are judged by standards that men rarely face. We're expected to work twice as hard for half the recognition while balancing careers, caregiving, and community responsibilities. And yet women rise to the challenge every day, fierce advocates for our children, our families, and our communities. And it is in that spirit that I stand before you tonight. As Gates said, my name is Terri Reese. I'm a lifelong Atlantic County resident, a graduate of Mainland Regional High School and the University of Pennsylvania, a single mother, and someone who has spent most of my life facing the same challenges as people in this district. I have been unemployed, I have relied on Medicaid, I have gone without health insurance, and worry about what would happen if someone or myself got sick. As a single mother, I fought attorneys for my children's fair share of child support, and won. I fought with school officials and healthcare providers to ensure that my daughter received educational and mental health support that she needed. And at the same time, I was part of the sandwich generation, raising my children while caring for my mother as she battled dementia, and working with her care team to fight for insurance companies so she could remain comfortable at home. And during more than 30 years in retail management, I advocated for employees to ensure they had fair wages, fair hours, and opportunities to grow in their careers. So when I say that I understand the struggles of people in this district, that's not hyperbole. I have lived them. And that matters, because the people of this district are wary of outsiders, they're skeptical of entitlement, and they want someone who understands and respects the uniqueness of our communities. This campaign reflects those values. More than 75% of our fundraising has been from within this district, and 100% of our volunteers are volunteers, they don't get paid. Our materials are sourced locally. Our team is made up from people throughout the district. We live our values, not waiting until after Election Day. I was also the first candidate to enter this race, not because of one particular grievance, but because of the growing cruelty toward the most vulnerable in our society. I don't believe in punching people when they're down. I don't believe in lifting people up. I was the first candidate to call out Jeff Van Drew on the beach replenishment issue, and the first to address the Vineland City Council about the dangers of the proposed data center and the broader problem of corporate extraction from our communities. And I will continue to lead, because the challenges we face require bold, systemic change. For me, that begins with restoring purpose to government so that it serves the people, not the well-connected. Purpose also means making life better for the people of this district, ensuring a living wage, comprehensive health care, addressing the housing and homelessness crisis, making sure our children are fed, our seniors can age with dignity, and our veterans receive the benefits they have rightly earned. And it means protecting our planet. Not only safeguarding our natural environment, but strengthening our transportation infrastructure and investing in renewable energy so our communities and economy can thrive for generations to come. And let's be clear, we don't have a money problem in this country, we have a priorities problem. And the people of this district deserve a representative who understands their struggles because they have lived them. Someone relatable, authentic, and who has always been committed to putting people first. I'm a proud daughter of this district. From the beaches to the bays, from our farms to our coastal marshlands, and I love every square inch of it. And when I'm elected, I will fight for this district with the same determination I have brought to every challenge in my life. And because it is long past time to send a Jersey girl and the first woman to represent New Jersey's 2nd Congressional District. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, let's please welcome Bayley Winder from Mays Landing.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Gabe, and appreciate the chance to join you tonight. My name is Bayley Winder. I'm a 4th generation New Jerseyan. I come from a family of folks who served our nation across the military, the State Department, and the CIA. I started my career working at the State Department on Iran. And I think that what is happening right now in this conflict with Iran is a perfect demonstration of how Congress is failing and how our interests are being left behind. I just saw that Pete Hegseth fired the most senior Army officer in this country. Pam Bondi got fired earlier today. I think Hegseth should be next. He should be firing people. He should be the one that's fired. And let me say this. Jeff Van Drew, today, audio leaked of him saying, costs are going up, go and get another job. That is what his message is to all of us, the people he works for. Well, Congress should make your life easier, not harder. Whether it's tariffs, whether it's pushing back on AI and data centers, whether it's the illegal activities of this executive branch, you all deserve better. After my time at the State Department, I was an advisor to the FBI. I worked as a small business for several years. Most recently, I served at USAID in the headquarters on the leadership team. I was proud to work there, and I think that USAID being torn down was a huge loss for our country. What have we seen since? Devastating corruption, inaction, incompetence, plain and simple. I think that this is a moment where we have to recognize that politics has failed working families. And that is much more so on Trump and Van Drew, but it is also to a degree about both parties. We have to pass the baton. We have to move forward and take risks. I'm not coming in here as a career politician. I'm not here to be a political hack for Hakeem Jeffries. I'm here to fight for you, even if that means ruffling feathers. My campaign is built on grassroots energy on the issues that most affect your lives. Cost of living, with tariffs, grocery prices, healthcare, Medicare strengthening, and Medicaid funding. There are things that we can do right now that are simply just not being done. And since I launched my campaign, I've sought to go everywhere in this district. Hold town halls, meet people at concerts and rallies and polar plunges. I stood outside of a ShopRite in Manahawkin and talked to folks, and people thought I was nuts doing that. Because you know, Manahawkin, it's a little bit of a questionable place for a Democratic candidate to be running around. I had plenty of good conversations. People are hungry for someone who's going to listen and who's going to meet them where they are. And that is what my campaign is about. You all know what Jeff Van Drew is, what he stands for and what he does not stand for. But the corruption in DC is something that's also out of control. So I support term limits, a ban on stock trading in Congress. I take no corporate PAC money. And I think this is our chance to move on from the corrupt, entrenched politics of DC that has made it harder for things to get done for all of you. I'll also say no district in this state does nature and sustainability matter more than right here. And I look at Ocean County, I look at your incredible community, whether it's FEMA funding, whether it's beach erosion and dune replenishment. Van Drew has failed, and we need to recognize that we need to invest in clean energy, in protecting the shoreline that is crucial for your economy and your quality of life, and make sure that that is always a priority. But government, when done correctly, provides the basic services and lets you live your life, and right now, it's the opposite of that. I've served under 3 different administrations, Republican and Democratic. I've taken that oath to the Constitution. I've been privileged to work with Democrats, Republicans, and anyone else in the name of getting things done. Because in DC, it's hard to get anything done. But I do believe that coming out of this year, we can actually take a bold step forward. But it requires someone who's prepared to do that. Someone who is going to come into this with a mentality rooted in serving the needs of the community. Not big corporations, not the AI companies that are jacking up your utility bills. I ask you to join me, and I pledge to fight alongside you. I'm here to take risks. I'm not here to do business as usual politics. And I think that we can come together uniquely right now and make this flip happen. Jeff Van Drew is running scared. I have the cardboard cut out of him in my car right now. And unless you go to a fundraiser, it's probably the most you're gonna see of him, to be honest. But I really appreciate you, and I look forward to the conversation. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Bayley. Next up, Tim Alexander from Galloway.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I am Tim Alexander, as you just heard. Many of you know me, some of you do not, so indulge me a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit who I am. I am a very qualified individual for this position, having over 30 years of public service. I continue to serve my communities using the connections that I have to help people without the benefit of being in office. I'm looking for my dragon out there. I'm a double dragon with Drexel University, and I'm also a attorney having graduated through Rutgers Law School in Camden. I'm married to beautiful Ann Alexander in the back of the room, and we have 3 wonderful adult children, one of whom is taking photos for me. So that's pretty much who I am, and let me tell you what I'm about. This election is perhaps one of the most important elections that I've been involved in. And I say it that way because this is my 3rd election. Why does that matter? Well, because I have the experience. More importantly, I have the name recognition. I would venture to guess that no one has more name recognition today than I do, other than Jeff Van Drew, and we're closing that gap. We're closing that gap on Jeff Van Drew, but here's the thing about him. The gloves are off. We are not going to be polite, we're not going to be gentle. We're going to tell it the way it is, and we're going to use his words. Jeff is the gift that keeps on giving. And this is going to be the most aggressive campaign you've seen with me being involved in it. Because it has to be. We must win. We cannot take a chance on an individual who's not from this district. We cannot take a chance on someone who lies to you. Remember who else lied? Jeff Van Drew. And look what that got us. So do not trust anyone who's not telling you the truth, who's not being fully transparent and where they are in life and what their background actually is. My job is to win this election. I'm going to do it through the information that we were able to glean by helping Mike and Cheryl out. We know exactly where we need to be. We know exactly which doors we need to knock and where to send our postcards, because I suspended my campaign over the summer to help her get elected. It was the sole reason, because Jack Ciccarelli could not be our governor. And that means also that Jeff Van Drew can no longer be our representative. He must go. So to that end, I'm going to put it all in, and I have already. We're going to fight like hell to make this happen. And as far as my policies, they're on my website, timalexanderforcongress.com. And what you'll find is not only the policy on housing, on health care, on funding our education, our public schools. It shows you a pathway on how we could pay for it. Because some candidates would say, well, we could just tax the billionaires. But the reality there is we have $646 billion in uncollected taxes every year. 1/3 of that is the 1% earners. More than 70% are people who make over $500,000 a year. More taxes is not going to help us. We got to use the budget that we have to make the things happen. I have walked in every single pair of shoes except for being rich. I grew up very poor. I lived in public housing. My mom had a great opportunity to transition from being a renter to being a homeowner through a public program. I want to bring that back. We had the funding to make that happen. The difference is, my mom, we were in a little small house with T111 siding, but it was good for us. I'm not knocking it. But now, a friend of mine over in Logan Township, Samir, he showed me what affordable housing actually looks like today. And it's front, back, inside. This is going to be a great thing for people. But we have to change what it means to be low income. If you're a family of $400,000 a year, you're barely making it, if you're making it at all. And we need to change that as well. We need to be realistic to what our economy looks like today. We could do these things, folks. Our health care, I have a plan that we could buy into Medicare. It's going to bolster Medicare, but also make a very competitive market for other health insurance to either fall in line or go away. These things can happen because we have the resources to make them happen. We just got to have the will. And I invite you to go look at more of my policies, particularly the one on how we're going to fund our education. But I want to stay focused on what our purpose is here today. It is to convince you that one of us up here is the best candidate to beat Jeff Van Drew. And I don't see my prior elections as a crutch. I see them as a plus because I have the experience. I know where we have to be. I have the connections. I have everything I need to be successful, save for raising more money. And with that being said, I need your support. I need every single one of you to support this campaign and make this happen. And you do so, I guarantee you the outcome is we beat Jeff Van Drew in November. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Last but not least, joining us all the way from Cape May, Mayor Zack Mullock.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Great Bay. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. South Jersey cannot afford to lose another election. If we're serious about defeating Van Drew, we have to begin with a simple and honest question. Who here has won? Not speeches, not slogans, not even conventions, but elections. I'm the only candidate up here who has won several elections in this primary, and I've done that in Jeff Van Drew's backyard. And here's the harsh truth. You can give the best speech in the world, this won't be one of them. You can win every room at a convention, and you can say all the right things. But if you lose the primary or you lose the general, none of it matters. No bills get passed. It means we go to war. It means children die in that war. It means gas prices go up. It means our 401ks get diminished. It means minimum wage stays stagnant. It means coastlines go unprotected. Data centers get built without community involvement. And multinational companies and billion-dollar companies get tax cuts to build those buildings. Health insurance continues to bankrupt families. It means we get the big, beautiful bill, the largest transfer of wealth from the very poorest to the very richest, which passed by one vote, Jeff Van Drew's vote. It means insiders profit on war. It means our president rakes in billions of dollars in Bitcoin and other investments around the entire world. And meanwhile, your families struggle. That is why this election is so important. We need a proven winner to beat Jeff Van Drew. I've won it 3 times in one of the most Republican counties in the state and the strongest GOP in the state. I've run against a Republican mayor who was backed by the political machine, and we won. And I'm proud to have worked with Governor Mikey Sherrill many times now, which is great, but she's done great, and thank you all for all the hard work that you all did to get out and vote for her. I've worked with Senator Cory Booker, where my family and I started the Harriet Tubman Museum. I was the general contractor on the project. I've supported Senator Andy Kim, where we've collaborated on beach replenishment, our seawall, and the U.S. Coast Guard base. If you don't know, Cape May is home to the only training base for the U.S. Coast Guard, and I'm honored to be on the Coast Guard Foundation Board. We've had Senator Kim speak at the Cape May Point Arts and Science Center. My family founded that center, where we saved the Sisters of St. Joseph building down in Cape May. That building now is dedicated to the environment, to the arts, to science, and it was just featured on 60 Minutes a few months back on tracking monarch butterflies. Pretty cool stuff. And I think that's, and other candidates just said this, but I think it's so important in this campaign that we discuss our environment. Our environment is so important, CB2, the pinelands, our shore, the wetlands, farmlands. And I'm proud that my family and I have helped preserve some farmlands where we allow farmers to farm there for free, which is pretty cool. The only thing we ever ask for once in a while is a little bit of honey or some of their crops. And we protected overdevelopment in Cape May, which is so important for so many of our communities. As mayor, we've saved the historic segregated school in town. We converted that into a library. And we saved the AME Church, a historically black church that was destined to be demolished, which is now our theater in town. So I'm proud to say that also we made our first female lifeguard in Cape May. And in fact, we're actually doing our female lifeguard facility in town as we speak. I'm also proud to have served on the Atlantic Cape Community College Board for the last 10 years. I tell you all of this to tell you this is what makes a person. When you don't know who this person is. I didn't just move here. South Jersey's in my blood. I've been involved in this community for many, many years. It's where I have my businesses. It's where we build up nonprofits. It's where I'm raising my family. And when you speak tonight, you're going to hear some things about the community involvement, and then you'll see others who talk nothing about community involvement. Please notice that. That's important. To beat Jeff Van Drew, which is what we had to do, We need someone who, yes, has won elections, but also has been involved in our community. I travel all around this district, and I hear the same thing from everybody. They want a Democrat who can win. They want a Democrat who can deliver, and they want a Democrat who will beat Jeff Van Drew. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zack. A round of applause, please, for our candidate. So I'm going to moderate the questions from the floor because I want to have these fine four folks be the center of attention. So you'll just excuse me for a moment. So we're going to begin our evening questions with a very light topic, the Middle East. Each question will have a brief preface and then there'll be some compound questions follow, so you do have pen and paper in front of you in case you wish to record anything. First question, international politics. Following the October 7th attacks by Hamas, Israel launched a sustained military campaign in Gaza that's now expanded into Lebanon. International organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, as well as many United Nations experts, contend that Israel's actions may amount to genocide and other serious violations of international law. At the same time, legal experts and governments remain divided on whether the legal standard for a genocide has been met. But what is not in dispute is the scale of human impact, with tens of thousands of Palestinians reported killed. Question: do you believe that Israel's actions meet the legal definition of genocide? Why or why not? And what would you do in Congress to address the crisis and U.S. policy? Beginning with Terri, please.
Please silence your cell phone or mon Dieu professeur. Thank you. So I'm going to read this statement provided. Hold it. Can you read? Hello? Okay, there we go. So the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine has caused immense suffering. Yes, I believe that it is a genocide at the Palestinians who face displacement, destruction of their homes, infrastructure, school, restricted access to essentials, and reports of mass killing, sexual violence report them. This does not diminish any violence perpetrated against Israeli civilians. However, the scale of the hardship that has been endured by Palestinians does highlight the urgent need for humanitarian aid and protection of innocent lives. Seeking out against atrocities committed by the Israeli military and company's leaders is not anti-Semitic. It is a stand against human rights violations and a call to protect civilians. We must recognize the systematic persecution and suffering that the Jewish people have endured for thousands of years, their history, and their right to defend themselves when attacked. This history does not erase the rights of those living under Israeli governance or occupation, and it underscores the moral imperatives to find a just and peaceful solution that protects all civilians. In 2025, 2026, we should be beyond subcasts of oppression, and our focus must be on peace, human right, and humanitarian relief, not using U.S. tax dollars to fund violence, and every policy place should prioritize the dignity, security, and well-being of those caught in the crossfire. And that's what I would fight for when I'm elected and published.
Thank you very much, Terri. Bayley, the same question, please.
Yes, and I will say that what happened on October 7th was a horrible tragedy, and what has happened since then in terms of loss of life and humanitarian impact is totally unacceptable and against the interest of all the parties involved, except for maybe Netanyahu's short-term interest. I served at USAID when October 7th happened and in the aftermath. And every single day we got reports. We had meetings with our staff on the ground about what was going on. We would sometimes say meetings white in the face because what happened was so horrible. And let's be clear, an America First foreign policy includes accountability for our partners, includes conditions for American support. No one should have support from the US without any condition. I don't think that's in our interest at all. But we need to get back to an actual diplomatic solution that in the long term can make clear that both sides can live with dignity and peace. This is not an either-or situation. Too often in politics in this country, it's treated as such. And there needs to be an investment from the US in being a reliable partner for diplomacy not just an added point of confusion where we're sending real estate developers to negotiate in the Middle East. That is not smart. Anyone could say that. But the State Department needs to be invested in, USAID needs to be invested in, international law needs to be adhered to. And that is just in the interest of both the Israelis and the Palestinians. This current path is not sustainable. It is just simply not, and we need to do better in terms of our role in office. And recognize that this is not just about special interests, this is about human lives. This is about humanitarian impact that will have a ripple effect for generations to come. When the Trump administration tore down USAID unconstitutionally, when Elon Musk put it through a wood chipper, that sent a pretty clear signal about what they think. And foreign policy under this Trump administration is foreign policy in the interest of lining the pockets of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, and many others. It's transactions, it's corruption. It is not about making things better for folks on the ground in the Middle East. And look at this Iran war. Why are we doing this? Why is this in American interest? Why are you looking at $200 billion potentially being spent to double down on this conflict when we have problems here at home? So we should use our resources in a way that's thoughtful, in a way that actually is strategic and makes clear what is an American priority and what is not. Because right now we are too far from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Sim, same question, please.
Yes, it's clearly a genocide. You don't need a rocket science degree to figure that out. I mean, just look at the before and after photos of Gaza, the destruction, the loss of lives, the starvation that Netanyahu's government inflicted on the people as he was trying to hunt down a few terrorists. And, you know, when October 7th happened, yes, Israel had every right to protect itself. But what we see today is not the same. This is so egregious. And I will hold this current administration responsible because they are complicit with what's going on. Every time we send a bomb or any other type of a device to Israel, we are complicit in committing genocide. Donald Trump and his administration also needs to be held accountable for what they've done, not to mention the things that he's doing here. So that's a no-brainer for me. With respect to what I would do in Congress, I would do my job. Congress has to approve these things. Congress approves the funding. Congress has the ability to deny weaponry towards a genocide. That's our job in Congress. So that's the job I'm fighting for in Congress. And I would do it. And I would be vocal about it. And I'll make sure I rally support to help people understand that we are complicit in what they're doing to the people in Gaza and now in other countries. And we not only are complicit, we joined in on the attack on Iran. It is mind-boggling that in addition to bombing civilian boats off the coast of Venezuela, that this president, this administration has taken a tack that this is what our country should be doing. And you know who else is complicit? Jeff Van Drew, because he is lock, stop, no daylight between the administration, everything they want, everything they say, he is with them. So yes, he has to go, and the replacement, which I'm hoping is myself, will do the job of Congress. Plain and simple. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, same questions for you.
Yes, it is. And not so happy note, happy Passover. You know, I look at this situation as, I forget who said this, but war is failure of diplomacy. We need to call out human rights violation, 100%. And the way I look at this is exactly how I look at the United States. I love this country. I am a true patriot. But when we went to a war in Iraq, I went to Washington, D.C. with my father and protested. That's not because we don't like the United States. It's because we don't like the actions that they were taking. And there's a difference between those two things. So we can support Israel, but also call out human rights violations. And that's exactly what we should be doing in the United States when we're upset with our own country. And I know many of you feel the same way. But what the main point I want to make in this is Jeff Van Drew and Donald Trump are making us less safe. That is the biggest issue we are having right now. Jeff Van Drew and Donald Trump are making us less safe. Just the other day, Donald Trump talked about actually pulling out of NATO. Pulling out of NATO. Both of my grandfathers, and I'm sure many of you had relatives who fought in World War II. When they came home, they talked to their loved ones and their children. And my father, who was in the Army, always taught me about how important it is to have these alliances that keep world peace. So to think that now we're talking about getting out of NATO and getting in fights with our neighbors like Canada, and not to get too far off topic, but I don't want to not mention this. As mayor of Cape May, 10% of our tourism comes from Canada. Last year, it was 8% down. For a lot of our small businesses, that is their profit. So it is having ramifications all over, whether it be gasoline and all these different things, for endless wars that none of us support. $1.5 billion a day is being spent in Iran. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Keeping with international affairs, the Trump administration's war with Iran has driven up energy costs, destabilized markets, and strained alliances, particularly with talk of leaving NATO. At the same time, Republicans in Congress have abdicated their constitutional responsibilities, allowing the president to take us into war without authorization or even a clear purpose. The question: when Democrats retake Congress, what will you do immediately to reassert congressional authority over war powers, military escalation, and alliances? And what long-term guardrails would you put in place so this can't happen again? Beginning with Bayley, please.
Well, the War Powers Act needs to be passed immediately. And let's be clear, Donald Trump has taken this to a new extreme. He's bombed 7 countries. But this was a problem even before Donald Trump, with Democratic and Republican administrations who thought they could do this without congressional approval. When I worked in the executive branch, we had to fight tooth and nail to get approval from Congress for funding, because that is how it works. But if Congress doesn't do its job, then that goes away. So the War Powers Act needs to be passed immediately. This is a bipartisan problem, and it is unacceptable. I worked on Iran policy at the beginning of my career at the State Department. I was in the State Department when Donald Trump tore up the Iran nuclear deal. That was a mistake. That was nothing compared to what we are seeing now. Potentially a forever war. Members of our military dying for a war that has no clear objective, no timeline, is not making our country stronger, and we are facing the consequences every single day. Donald Trump just said, we don't have money for Medicare and childcare, but we have money for this war. Well, I don't think that's right, and I don't think any of you do either. But it is an offense to the American people that working families are struggling to get by, struggling to pay the bills. And Pete Hegseth wants to get an unlimited ATM for this conflict. When I worked on Iran diplomacy, we knew that this is not a country, a part of the world where you want to just take action and think later. But that is what is happening right now. It's military first, diplomacy last. It should be the other way around. This regime in Iran, they're terrible. They sponsor a lot of terrorism around the world. They've been there since 1979. You're not just going to topple them overnight. This war, if it ended today, would be a complete failure, and I hope it ends tomorrow, because every single day the consequences get worse and worse. But Congress only has leverage if it chooses to use it. You remember when Jeff Van Drew went into the Oval Office and went up to Trump and said, I give you my undying support. Well, if you give the president your undying support, go work for the president. Simple. Go work in the White House. He said he was offered a job in the White House. He should have taken it. I don't care if there's the best president of all time. If I'm in Congress, that is not who I work for. That is not my boss. That's basic checks and balances. And whether it's Iran, Venezuela, the tariffs, the big beautiful bill, Congress has plain and simple stood by and watched working families get squeezed while Donald Trump and his pals have the golden age of America that he promised all of us. So who is this the golden age for? Defense contractor? Jeff Bezos? Oil executives? Not for us. It's time to change that equation around, and it starts with representation.
Thank you very much, Terry. Tim, the same question, please.
So, not to sound like a broken record about doing our job, but literally this is Congress's job. So what would I do? That was the question that was asked. What would I do if elected? I would push the caucus to stop funding this illegal activity. It is their job today, right now. That is their responsibility. They have the power of the purse. Mike Johnson and his team has allowed Donald Trump through executive order to spend money when he should have been in court immediately stopping that activity. We will do that. I do believe we're gonna have a blue wave, perhaps even a tsunami. And we're gonna take back the House, maybe even the Senate. And we're gonna do our job. So the question is, what would I do? I would rally the caucus. Let's get our lawsuit together and let's stop his activities now. Let's do it safely. We learned our lesson back in the Vietnam War when we just cut the money. We have to do it responsibly, make sure our troops get home safely. We can do this. It's called walking and chewing gum at the same time. One of the things I'll say to you, and I think we all see it, is common sense ain't all that common in Washington. And we gotta bring some common sense back. We gotta realize that we have an obligation to our constituents, whether they voted for us or not, to keep this country safe and to control the spending. Because the spending is out of control, and Donald Trump looks at it as his own personal bank account. He has bankrupted how many companies? And he would bankrupt us if he could, with his whimsical ideas and his whimsical spending. So I'm gonna harp on this. Congress has the ability today to stop this illegal war. Congress has the ability today to bring an end to the illegal bombings of recreational boats off of Venezuela. Plain and simple, Congress is not doing its job, and we need to take the House. One person in Congress isn't going to make it happen. We need a caucus, we need the majority, and we need you to vote for Democrats so we make that happen. And when we do that, we then take back our power. We get out of these I will call them personal conflicts that Donald Trump would like to join in with his buddy Bibi Netanyahu. And let's get back to the business of tending to our country. We must start home with a lot of issues, and we can do that. Plain and simple, Congress has the ability to stop this, and I will make sure we do what our job is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Yeah, same question, please.
The fact is that Congress is derelict in their duty. As Kim said, they need to use the power of the purse. Now, we know that Democrats are in the minority, so they have an issue. But I think to get to the point, the question was, what can Congress do? And I think, Republicans published this thing called Project .5. Remember that? Remember, we all thought that was just, that couldn't be true. That this isn't real. All these points are so ridiculous. I can't believe they're even talking about this. Well, they're doing it. And you know what? Democrats have to have our own Project 2025. And no, it won't be about defunding schools or taking away lunch programs or defunding Medicaid. It'll be about protecting American people. But that's what we have to have. We have to have a full plan. And yes, it includes the War Powers Act and what we need to be doing to stop these endless wars 100%. And I'll mention a couple other issues that have gone almost unnoticed. We allowed the Russian agreement on the proliferation of nuclear warheads, the START Act, to just stop. We allowed it to disappear. That's a treaty, again, that has kept peace in our world for many, many years. That should scare everybody. Why would we not renew that? So I think there's so many things that this Congress is not doing right now. But yes, power of the purse is so important. And I one of the part of this question too was energy. I want to talk about that for just 1 second. Everyone is feeling this at the pump, and you're feeling this when you look at your electric bill. And that is, yes, from the war in Iran and the other 8 places that we've been bombing lately. But it's also because of some of the policy of the Trump and Jeff Van Drew folks. over $2 million was spent in South Jersey by the oil and gas companies to convince all of you that wind turbines are terrible. And you know what? You go to other countries across this world, and they are doing just fine. Now, there are important things that we need to do. I see a commercial fisherman in the audience. We need to work with the commercial fishermen to make sure that they're not put in locations that affect those guys. But we certainly need to be supporting green energy. And let me tell you one other thing. When you go throughout CD3 to CD2, especially you go out to Salem County, there are so many people who lost good paying union jobs because of this administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Terri, your second question, please.
Thank you. So as my colleagues up on the stage have said, because many things we agree on, the Congress must assert its power across the board with rigorous oversight into the actions of the executive branch that would include robust accountability for not only human rights abuses that they've done, but also for the deceit and utter disregard of the role of Congress has in the power of a purse, the ability for the power to declare war, and they need to bring all of those powers back to Congress. But right now, also, we'll probably jump on to something else, oversight of the Department of Defense, including auditing. The Department of Defense has not completed an audit, and oversight of their spending, because right now their spending is completely and totally out of control. Reestablish long-term alliances that bring about diplomacy with a focus on human rights. But the biggest part of all of this, what we're seeing that's happening with Iran, what we're seeing that's happening in Ukraine, what we're seeing that's happening in Israel, and Donald Trump, is a basis of money, is getting money out of politics and special interests out of politics as well, because both sides of the aisle, to be perfectly honest, are funded by these donors. And they're the ones who are raking in the profits from the wars that you have. Our oil companies, they're not going broke right now. And somebody I talked to the other day when I was in Vineland actually said, explain to me why gas prices have gone up almost $1 in some instances. The gas was already here. They already paid for it and brought it here. But yet they're raising the prices on it every single day. It's not the stuff that, like, if once they run out, but they're getting new stuff, and yes, then we should see it go up. But why is it today? They had it. That makes no sense at all whatsoever, and I agree. But again, it's the money that's in politics, because the powers that be, the oligarchy wants to stay in power. And as Zach had alluded to with the One Big Beautiful Bill, it's even worse than that. Over the past 50 years, the administrations and the Congress and the executive branch and all the policy they put in place have funneled $79 billion or $1 trillion into the top 1% under the guise of trickle-down economics. So in order to do that, we also need to enact term limits. So getting money out of politics, enacting term limits so we don't have these entrenched politicians who have nothing to lose because the money is being put into their pockets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terri. Final question on international issues. Amid the Iran conflict, Iran is mandating that all ships now passing through the Strait of Hormuz pay tolls in Chinese currency, the yuan. This raises concerns about China's growing influence over global markets. The question, do you see China as a partner, competitor, or adversary? And based on that, do you support partial or full decoupling in critical sectors? What does that look like, and what trade-offs are you willing to accept as a congressperson? Beginning with Tim, please.
So the question is, how do we view China on an international platform? Partners, competitors, or adversaries? I would say that they are competitor adversaries. When it comes to development and technology, they are strong competitors. We cheat a lot, but they are competitors. When it comes to the world stage, I believe that they are adversaries, and that we must be cautious in dealing with China. We must be aware of what China's done with their military. They've grown it to a huge portion to their population. China is trying to take the world stage. Currently, the administration, along with Jeff Van Drew, is ceding the world stage to them through their ridiculous actions and policies. We have to claim that back. We have to claim our strength back. Our strength is not in bombing other countries. Our strength is the knowledge that we can bomb them, but through diplomacy, we get things accomplished. The fact that that Iran is charging a fee and they want it paid in Chinese currency is both telling to the damage that has been done to our credibility across the globe. Who would ever thought this? Who ever thought today in 2026 we'd be here looking at China, wondering what's next for them? They're growing it on the African continent, they're growing in the Middle East, and we are still playing by these old rules from the late 70s, early 80s, that we have this world dominance. It is a smoke and mirrors. And that's not to say that the United States is weak. It's not to say that we are in trouble fully. What's to say is we have to, until we can get this administration out of office, we have to get rid of his sycophants, and that is Jeff Van Drew. And we have to make sure that we become the nation that we know we are. A strong country who carries a big stick, but we know how to negotiate, and we know how to communicate, and we know how to get things done with partnership, not ceding our position to China. So to answer the question again, they are both adversaries and competitors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. The same question, please.
This question goes right back to our Democratic allies that we need to keep. Right now, I said before, but I'd say it again, we are less safe under Jeff Van Drew. We need to keep our partnership. Now, it is true, China is very concerning in their buildup of military. But I will say, what's interesting is, we had a question a few weeks back, and the question was, do you support the amount of spending in our military in the United States? Now, the day of that event, Donald Trump asked for a 50% increase in our military spending. So we went from 1 trillion to a requested 1.5 trillion, which would make our military spending more than the next 20 countries, including China. So, but to answer the question more directly, we need to protect our allies, especially Taiwan, and we need to be very cautious about the alliances that are forming with China because of the lack of diplomacy by the United States. I also think there are certain things we saw during COVID-19 that is so important that is manufactured in the United States. And actually, one question again that we've received is there anything you agree with Donald Trump on that we've received? And I will say one thing I saw today that I read was there was a discussion on tariffs of medicine and prescriptions that are being manufactured in China, that if they were to be manufactured in the United States, they would no longer have that tariff. I agree with that. I think that's good policy. So I think we have to rely on our alliances, and if we don't, China is going to fill that void. We see it in South America. We saw it in Venezuela. We see it in Brazil. Those are countries that we need to be aligned with, and we need to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zack. Terri, in question, please.
I may have a little different take on this as a mom that had to negotiate peace between 2 children. So that being said, I think that there are ways where we could be in partnership with China. We're not in partnership with them right now, but there are ways where we could be, because I believe everyone should be able to get along to make the world a better place. And again, that's idealistic, but that's how I am. There are fierce competitors in the technology market. That is very, very true. And they are adversaries when it comes to military. But what we saw is when USAID was dismantled, China stepped in. They were looking for a way in order to put get their foot in the door across the world where the United States had always been. And that was a failure on the part of the Trump administration. To mention that they are thieves. They are, but we have thieves in this country as well, because we know that Elon Musk isn't as brilliant as people say. He stole a lot of his ideas. But going forward, I'm for diplomacy first, and that is what I will always swipe for, is making sure that we have American interests are put first,
but we learn, take the best practices of what's working in other countries and bring them here to make our country better and stronger.
And building the alliances that we had and have had for years and years and years, building them stronger as well. Thank you.
Anti Assembly. Bailey, just in question, please.
Well, for starters, it doesn't take the diplomatic genius to understand that if you attack Iran, they're going to use the oil and energy sector as leverage. So Donald Trump seems to be shocked that the Strait of Hormuz is now facing issues. Maybe he should have started a war, right? That would have been a good way to avoid where we are now. China is America's chief competitor in the world, and that is not going to change anytime soon. I think a few things. Number one, on the biggest issues facing our planet, including sustainability, clean energy, there needs to be some cooperation between major powers. And that is possible, I believe. I'll also say China is doubling down right now on a clean energy revolution, while Donald Trump and Jeff Van Drew are taking us backwards. Doubling down on oil and coal while China is surging ahead. That is going to have huge consequences for the next 2 decades, centuries for the American economy. When I served at the FBI with special agents in the J. Edgar Hoover building, one of the things we worked on was managing the risk of Chinese espionage on college campuses. That's an example of something where you do want to watch out and you do want to have strong guardrails in place. At the same time, a lot of countries right now do not see the US as a dependable ally for reasons that we can understand, and China is becoming more attractive. I went to the Philippines with the White House delegation last year. The Philippines has always been a strong supporter of America, always been a big fan of ours. Well, right now, Beijing is courting them, and they are second guessing where they stand with the US. Think about that on a global scale. And yes, when our work at USAID was torn down, China was thrilled because they knew what it represented and they knew what that vacuum means for them. It means opportunity. But it's not realistic to decouple from China fully. We consume their products. We rely on China in many, many ways. China owns a ton of US dollars. But it is also true that the US dollar and the US monopoly in diplomatic power is not what it used to be. So we have to be realistic about the path forward and build relationships that can last, that are sustainable, that are consistent. Right now, it is based on what Donald Trump thinks when he wakes up in the morning. He says his only check on his power is his own morality. Well, that sounds terrifying, and we are seeing it play out before our very eyes. And again, for China, this is playing right into their hands. So we have to be vigilant, have to be strategic, have to make sure that we stand with our allies, reinforce partnerships, and understand that the global order is moving forward, and we want to be a part of progress, not crisis, not holding folks back, especially here at home.
Thank you very much, Bailey. Moving on to domestic issues, the United States spends more on healthcare than any developed nation in the world, yet tens of millions of Americans remain uninsured or underinsured, and millions more delay or skip care because of cost. Medical debt remains one of the leading causes of financial hardship, even for people who have insurance. Many Democrats and health policy experts argue that this reflects a structural failure in a system that relies heavily on private insurance, while other developed countries guarantee health care as a right. The question: what is your position on moving the United States toward a single-payer healthcare system such as Medicare for All? Do you support it, oppose it, or support some version of it? And regardless of your position, what specific steps would you take in Congress to address the current healthcare crisis? Beginning with Zack, please.
Yeah, I do believe it's a structural failure, and I support Medicare for All. You know, as you said, we as a country spend more on our health care than any other country, yet we have millions of people who are uninsured. The fact that we are the wealthiest country in the world, and that is the status, is absurd. And we see what works in other countries. So yes, I believe in Medicare for All because I believe that we could cover from mental health, from the very top to the very bottom, including dental and vision. Because, and let me just say this as a candidate, because that was important, because again, We can all hear these things tonight and say, hey, that sounds really good. But if we don't beat Jeff Van Drew, it doesn't matter. And what Jeff Van Drew is going to say when you say, hey, you're for Medicare for all, he's going to say, look, that guy's a taxing spend Democrat. And what I'm going to say is, I've been mayor of Cape May for the last 6 years. I've been on city council for 8. We didn't raise taxes for 7 years. And during that time, we increased the health care for our employees because we knew that that was important, and we included all of those vision for the dental. And we didn't raise taxes. And that is my track record that I will be able to talk to with Jeff Van Drew. In regards to healthcare itself, yes, again, I support Medicare for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Terri, same question, please.
I believe healthcare is a human right. It shouldn't depend on your job, your income, or whether an insurance company is one who decides whether you're worth covering or deserve care. My goal is universal health care, but we have to, the first step would be expanding Medicare as a pathway to Medicare for all. So as they open it up to more and more people with affordable coverage, it will bring down the overall costs for everyone. I also want a system that is comprehensive and equitable, that covers the whole body, prescriptions, eyes, teeth, ears, why people think that your head isn't part of your body, I had no idea. Full reproductive care for the entirety of a woman's health or women's lifespan, and reproductive, well, it's just the entire lifespan because it's certainly not thought of right now. Mental health care and long-term care for our seniors because that is severely lacking. We also have to recognize the differences across gender, race, and other factors that are often overlooked in treatment. Private insurance can still exist for elective or supplemental care, but healthcare basic needs should be covered by everybody. And also shifting the focus away from crisis and emergency care to prevention with regular checkups, early treatment, and keeping people healthy in the first place. Other developed countries already do this, and they spend less than we do and get better overall outcomes. So we need to take the best ideas from those systems and see how we can make them work here. We also can't worry about our rural communities that are often so far overlooked, and the people who live there often have to travel hours in order to get treatment. And we can pay for this all without raising taxes on working families by cutting the massive administrative waste in our current insurance system and redirecting some funding from our already inflated defense budget. Because healthcare should be about caring about people and not maximizing profits while the working class drowns in medical debt. And just to give you a little idea as to what that is, universal healthcare in 2024 posted $18 billion in profits, by far the most out of all the healthcare companies, while the American people, I believe, had something like $625 million or billion dollars in medical debt, and that as well.
Thank you very much, Terri. Bayley, same question, please.
So yes, I do believe in a pathway to universal coverage. I think in the short term, first of all, a beautiful bill for Congress is a bill that taxes billionaires more to fund Medicaid. It is the opposite of what Andrew voted. And let's be clear, what happens in one part of the healthcare sector impacts everyone. So this is not just about Medicaid, it is about hospitals functioning. It is about rural clinics staying alive across the state district of ours. I believe in Medicaid funding. I believe in expanding Medicare to include dental, hearing, and vision. I think what happens with women's health in our country is shameful, that the government thinks that it is optional to respect the needs of women when it comes to their own bodies and their own health care. And I spoke this morning with a veteran. Jeff Van Drew has just co-sponsored a bill to give medals to people who suffered because of Agent Orange. This veteran experienced the impacts of Agent Orange. You know what he told me? I don't want a medal, I want better care from the VA. Where is Jeff when it comes to that? He votes against veterans' interests. People who have sacrificed so much and do not get the care they deserve. So when we're talking about healthcare, we have to talk about it in a comprehensive way. This too relates to the corruption in DC. If you're a member of Congress and you're taking money from the healthcare industry, how are you going to vote when healthcare is on the line? You're going to have multiple bosses. And if you're trading stocks and making money for your personal net worth, then you're really going to be screwing us over with a conflict of interest, plain and simple. If you were to try to do that, we would get fired from our job because it is outrageous, but somehow in Congress they get away with it time after time. Our healthcare system, like our immigration system, is fundamentally broken. So a few quick fixes, it's not going to cut it. I also believe that drug negotiation power needs to be much stronger in our government. Remember during the Biden administration when insulin got cut down in price? Why don't we take that attitude to other medicines as well? Why don't we take on Big Pharma and say, the medicines we pay so much more for than the rest of the world, enough is enough? Congress can do much more there than it's doing. Van Drew takes corporate PAC money, a lot of Democrats do too. But that is a clear place to start. So you have to think about healthcare across the board. What you pay for drugs, what you pay for basic care, what you pay for emergencies. We have families going bankrupt every single day in this country because they cannot afford to provide healthcare for that family, and that is a stain on the American system. We need urgent change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Tim, same question, please.
So this is extremely personal for me and Anna. Our daughter, our 31-year-old daughter is a police officer in Camden, and she was doing her dream job. She loved it. She got involved in the call that required her to go into a very, very unsanitary situation. And after rolling around in the filth with a couple that was fighting her over a child, and everything worked out well, the cavalry came. 2 days later, she contracted a virus. And that virus attacked her heart. So at 31, my daughter's in ICU because she's having all the symptoms and signs of a heart attack because of this virus. That situation progressed over years. She ended up having myocarditis, which is the widening and flattening of the heart. And she stayed in and out of the hospitals for that entire time, which means she couldn't be a police officer anymore. And after a year, she was out of the hospital for a short stay. I had to go with her while she turned in all her equipment. And it was perhaps the saddest moment in her life. But at the end, she went back in the hospital, and we weren't really happy with the care she was getting, so we got her moved over to Pennsylvania, UPenn. Within 4 days, they had her on a transplant list. It moved so quickly. And as we're going through the process and talking about her post-care, we had to meet with the young lady for payment, and she says, well, your daughter's on New Jersey Medicare because she couldn't work anymore. And this is Pennsylvania, and we don't cover that. So the procedure is $2.7 million plus the post-care. And she really had the audacity to ask us how we were prepared to pay for it. So Anna and I spent that night figuring out everything in our house that we could sell, what we could live with, downsize, and take on that debt for our daughter. Because we weren't going to have the 33-year-old with a heart transplant dealing with millions of dollars in debt. The next day, Anna found a provision in Medicare that allowed that procedure to be done and paid for. The one big, beautiful bill removed that procedure, that provision. And that's what got me into this race, because it's a direct attack on people who are below income or need a hand up for a short period of time, such as my daughter. I am advocating strongly for the ability for everyone to buy into Medicare. We run some numbers. My son is a tech whiz back there, and he built an AI, and he was able to show us that crunching the numbers, including all the supplemental parts, A through D, into healthcare, allowed us to purchase that at our ages a little more than half of what we currently pay. And the younger you are, the cheaper it is. I believe that that is a first step to universal healthcare. It is a viable plan. We've run it every way possible. We've challenged it ourselves, and it works. I told this to a Congress member, Greg Meeks out of New York, and he said, man, you're gonna have the lobbyists lined up around the corner trying to talk you out of this. But that's okay, because they can wait forever. They're not gonna change my mind on this issue. This can be done. It must be done. If you want more details, go to my website, Tim Alexander, number 4,
Thank you,
Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Continuing with domestic issues, affordability is a top issue for many families. Housing costs are outpacing wages, education leaves people with long-term debt, and prices across the economy continue to rise. At the same time, the rapid growth of artificial intelligence is driving increased energy demand, putting upward pressure on electricity costs. That pressure is compounded by delays and the cancellation of clean energy projects including offshore wind right here in CD2, limiting new supply that could help stabilize prices. So the question, what specific steps would you take to bring down costs for working families, especially in housing, education, and energy? And how will you make sure AI growth and the clean energy transition lowers costs instead of dragging them higher? Beginning with Terri, please.
Sorry, I didn't write that task. So bringing down the cost for housing.
It's more general.
Oh, just move
Affordability.
down altogether? Oh, okay. Because I had like 3 or 4 different things that I could talk to about this. So first, we know that costs have risen significantly, but they'd outpace the growth of wages overall. So I will fight for a living wage. And what that means is right now, New Jersey's really good. We have a $15.92 minimum wage, which is better than many of the states in this country, which has still a $7.25. But if you look at the MI2 wage calculator, the average living wage for a single person in our district to afford housing, food, transportation, and healthcare would be $24.50. And we are far, far, far out. So that would be the first thing, is praying for a living wage. To bring down the cost of housing is really looking at what are the types of housing that are being built. Right down the street from me, they filled in some marshland in Linwood, and they're building condominiums at the very reasonable price to live in Linwood of $789,000. So the kids coming out of college, my own kids, they can't afford to buy a $789,000 house. But that's what we're seeing are these huge homes that are being built that are going to attract the people who make lots and lots of money. We have 3 of the 4 poorest counties in the district. Our people who live here can't afford to live in these homes. A quarter of the buildings in our district are vacant. And we need to invest in affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, it's not, I think a lot of times people look at that as in a very poor way. Affordable housing means that somebody who is working a full-time job can afford to live. It's not about a race, it's not about socioeconomic status, it's the fact that if we have people who work here in our district full-time, they should be able to live and not just barely survive. 10% of the people in our district live in poverty. The next 39% live, or what we call in the Alice group, those are the working poor that are one paycheck away from complete and total devastation. Seniors are the biggest group that are going homeless right now, and we need to address that. Reining in the energy companies, investing in clean energy, and putting a national moratorium on AI data centers, not only for how they're built, as ensuring that we have environmental health and community environmental impact studies, but also reining in the ethical components as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terri. Brayden, 10 questions, please.
Well, in terms of housing, for starters, shutdown to tariffs the Trump administration is taxing all of us with that impact housing construction, and shut down to ICE abuses that make it hard for people to get things done in our community personally and professionally. Also, there are private equity firms that are buying houses by the thousands, tens of thousands, without any government checks on them. There need to be government checks on them. Housing should be about prioritizing families, not transactions for Wall Street billionaires. And again, that comes into who's paying who, right? All of the money. There are property tax credits that I believe could strengthen the ability of first-time home buyers. I'm not talking tax credits for someone buying their vacation home, someone buying their starter home. And we know property taxes in this state are hugely expensive. In terms of energy, clean energy tax credits. The LIHEAP program, which helps with lower income folks paying their energy bills, very successful, is being cut down right now. Diversifying our energy sources with different modes, not just oil and gas, so that it's more sustainable and more affordable, and pushing back on the monopolies that are jacking up our utility bills without, again, anything stopping them. Monopolies are bad for the consumer. There's a reason why we don't have them in other places. They should not be there in utilities. AI is here to stay, but there needs to be AI protections that put the community first. So I do believe in a moratorium for data centers right now until we get the situation under control, for independent environmental reviews and with protections for all of us in the community. These AI companies are getting tax breaks, they're getting the red carpet rolled after them. They can afford to pay for their own development. They don't need a VIP pass from government officials. Why does that happen? The utility bill crisis is on the community, not on these AI companies. It should be the other way around. And absolutely, the way they're jacking up energy needs to have constant supervision, because the government tends to be slow in keeping up with the private sector, but with AI, it's even harder. It is moving so fast. Education, I believe in supporting vocational programs for folks who are not going to four-year colleges necessarily. And I think it is shameful that our teachers do not get the benefits and support they deserve. Teachers are heroes. I've met with the teacher unions, and teachers are incredible. I crashed a book club of retired teachers recently. That was a fun time. I would recommend it to anyone. They told me if someone asked them today if they should go into teaching, they would say no, because it is too hard to live as a teacher. Well, like a lot of you, I'm a proud product of New Jersey Public Schools. It is one of our great strengths as a state. We cannot forget about that when it comes to federal funding.
Thank you very much, Bayley.
Same question, please. So there's a lot to unpack. You heard me talk about my idea for my housing plan, where people such as myself, growing up very poor, benefited from a program that led to home ownership. And what it did is you paid your rent based on your income for 5 years. The housing authority kept a portion of the money set aside, so at the end of the 5 years, you could qualify for a mortgage. My mom did those things, and she purchased her house, totally remodeled it, and lived there until she retires and moved to Georgia. The one caveat is that we have to change the meaning of low income. As I said earlier, a family of four over $100,000 is having a hard time. So we need to change those definitions, and we certainly need to increase the minimum wage nationally. Energy. I don't see any harm in advocating and bringing back the wind turbines off the coast of New Jersey. It is not a curse word. It's not something that we should be afraid of or ashamed of or run away from. We need to do it responsibly. We need to listen to all the people who have concerns. We could do it better than we did the first time. But nevertheless, we need to bring back alternative energy sources, not just wind, but also solar. And again, we have a lot of open space that we could put these panels in and generate significant energy. In addition to that, I was introduced to little small turbines that go on top of telephone poles and roofs. They generate a crazy amount of energy. Enough for one turbine generates enough energy for 2 homes. So we could explore that. There's a lot of things in technology that's improved since Andrew killed wind to make it more viable and bring it back. When it comes to education, I have a plan on my website that talks about New Jersey being one of 24 states that have legalized cannabis sales. If we do it on a federal level, we decriminalize it. We then have the ability to tax it, like we tax cigarettes, wine, and liquor sales in this country. But by law, every single penny has to go to pre-K through 12 public school education. It has to go to the districts. It cannot go to the states. It must pass directly to them. We can make that happen. I've been talking to members of the teachers union. We have to refine it. Some of my ideas are not based, my background is not education, so I take the subject matter expert's word for what we need to do. And we can do this, and I believe it's a windfall of money that comes back to only the 25 states who have decriminalized it thus far. And it goes back to those states for public school education, for teacher salaries and other educators. Lastly, we talked about wind turbines. So the question was wind turbines? AI data centers. We need a national standard environmental impact study that must touch on many factors involving community when these things go up. So I stand for a moratorium until we can get that hashed out and implemented nationally. And if they receive 1 penny of federal money, they must abide by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Rob, same question, please.
So first, we just mentioned wind turbines. person who originally pushed wind turbines was Van Drew, and his daughter actually worked for the wind industry. So he had a wind turbine in his backyard, which he's since taken down. How ridiculous is that? We need a green energy revolution in the country, and as was mentioned earlier, other countries are surpassing us at this point. It was mentioned earlier, China is beating us now in clean technology. That is going to be the way of the world, and we're going. So even just looking at this financially, forget about the environment for just a second. Financially, that is where all these jobs are going. So we need to lead in this, and yes, we need to care about the environment. And then, by the way, South Jersey needs to lead. And we were on that route, and again, going to create great union, hardworking, good union jobs. And those all are slack.
The first question
Another point I would make is we have 3 nuclear power plants in South Jersey. None of that electric stays here. It all goes out of South Jersey. And I think that's something that we need to fix. Why do we get to host these nuclear power plants but not get the benefit of that green technology? As we need to build that out so that it stays here in South Jersey. On the data center, the one in Violence is owned by a Russian billionaire. They gave him tax breaks. A billionaire, again, that gets tax breaks. And we think of these things happening somewhere else, right? But they're happening here in South Jersey, and we need to stop it. The environmental impact study that wasn't done well enough didn't include all the water that is so precious to those farmers out there in Byron. The community impact, the noise that we're hearing from that data center. And of course, this is going to be an issue for all of South Jersey that we need to make sure there are protections for. And also, by the way, those huge roofs that these data centers have need to have solar panels at a very minimum. Which will solve. On to housing, again, this is a big question. But as mayor of Cape May, this has been a big project for us. We have a housing authority in Cape May. And I have been highly involved in that the last 5 years, looking at all of the red tape that's involved in this. I can't stand that because it's taxpayers' dollars for folks that really want to see affordable housing being built. But when we got quotes to see, it came in at $600 a square foot. For anyone within the industry, it's typically around $250. I only have 30 seconds, but affordable housing is such an important issue in South Jersey. We're hearing it everywhere, but I think another revolution we need to have, we've done it before. After the Great Depression, we built millions of houses. We can do that again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We now have 2 remaining moderated questions. The next one concerns campaign finance thing. Supreme Court decisions like Buckley v. Bellevue and Citizens United open the door for unlimited political spending by corporations, wealthy individuals, and special interest groups. Since then, campaign spending has exploded, and it's become impossible to really know who is influencing our elections. One widely cited study by researchers at Princeton University found that when this donor class or corporate interests want something, it almost always becomes law. And when they don't, it almost never does, even if large majority of Americans support it. The study's conclusion was blunt. The preferences of ordinary Americans have little to no impact on public policy. The question: do you believe our current campaign finance system allows corporations and wealthy donors to have more influence than working Americans? And if so, what specific actions would you take in Congress to change that, including whether you would support overturning Citizens United or pursuing a constitutional amendment? Beginning with Bayley, please.
Well, the way that money and politics interact in our country is totally out of control. And yes, it makes the voice of each regular person diluted. How much did Elon Musk spend to get Donald Trump elected? Hundreds of millions of dollars. Why is that allowed? I don't know, but it absolutely should not. I signed the pledge to overturn Citizens United with End Citizens United, a great organization. I think Citizens United is a cancer on our democracy. It has to stop immediately. I also take no corporate PAC money. I recognize we need money to compete with Jeff Van Drew. It's a fact. Unfortunately, I wish it was not. So yes, I make hundreds of phone calls each week, making the case for why this is the year to flip the seat and why we need resources to do it. That is required in order to compete with someone who is an incumbent, who can make a phone call like Jeff Andrew can and got money like that. And more than 3,800 people have donated to our campaign. But we need to urgently get a hold of this issue. It cannot wait, and it infects everything. It makes corruption across the government so widespread in each industry, whether it's energy, defense, healthcare, you name it. Citizens United is going to be difficult to overturn, right? Unless you have a really strong, committed group of folks in Congress. And we know a lot of politicians promise one thing and then do another because they are bought and paid for. So if you look on my website, our anti-corruption platform is very clear. But we have raised more than $500,000 the old-fashioned way, by calling people and meeting with them and telling them why we can do this now. And we are going to use that money to get out our message, to do canvassing, phone banking, to make the push across this huge district of ours in the only way you can, which is with resources, plain and simple. But I do believe that Citizens United needs to be overturned immediately, and I believe that any politician from either party who is taking corporate PAC money should be ashamed of themselves, and yes, that includes Democrats. You cannot be hypocritical and only call out corruption in one party. That is not going to fly. You have to call it out wherever it is, regardless of whether it's on the political spectrum. They have to be named and shamed, and they have to be voted out of office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bayley. Tim, same question, please.
So, as a lawyer, we know that we can't overturn Citizens United. The Supreme Court must do it. And the Supreme Court that we have today is not going to turn it over. Now, how can we fix this? Well, there's two avenues. One, we can advocate for a constitutional amendment. And with the current climate, I don't know where our success will be there. But two, which is much more clear and easier to accomplish, the states can set the rules for elections. They do. And so the state can say, you cannot take this money. That is plain and simple. The state set the rules, and the state sets the terms, and the overturning, or the passing of Citizens United was directed at the federal government. The states have the ability to change this, and we must advocate for them to do that, plain and simple. So, and I want to talk about this too, because fundraising is difficult. But you cannot be disingenuous, hide your money in a private blind trust, and then come out and say, I'm one of the common men or person, and I want to vote for, I want you to vote for me. Because I understand your pain. I walked your shoes. When you got millions of dollars in a blind trust. So I'm going to ask you all to do your research on the candidates up here, myself included. And you'll find out what I'm talking about. Because it is BS to say that you are amongst us when you're sitting on millions of dollars. It's absolutely ridiculous to me. It's offensive. And I can't contain myself when I think about how angry I am. I am a common person. I've worked my ass off for what I've gotten. And yeah, I don't have rich friends I could call up and say, hey, can you drop a couple $100,000 on my campaign fund? I gotta earn that money. I gotta convince people that this is a viable campaign across the country. That's my task each and every day of reaching out to people to say, we can beat Jeff Andrew. Here is our plan to beat him. I need you to contribute to this campaign. And we work on this every day. I talk to elected officials every day on a national level, including today. What can we do? How can we bring in the money? And the significant difference between myself and others is that I have to earn my money. Nothing's given to me. I have to go out and convince people to support this campaign. That's the difference. So I don't like disingenuous nonsense. Please do your research about the candidates up here on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Zack, in practice, lady.
So I hated Citizens United before I started campaigning, and in the last 2 months I started hating it with the middle. I have to have a phone on my ear calling people begging for money. That should not be how our candidates run for Congress. We should be out among the people learning about the things that we need to learn about among the people we're running for, not sitting there asking for money. So frankly, I agree with a lot of what Tim just said there. It's really a sad state of affairs where we're at. I also signed on to the Unrigged Washington Pledge. What that means is three things: that I will do anything I can to end Citizens United. Yes, it is a legal issue. Two, I will not trade any individual stocks if I become a congressperson, which is important. By the way, I don't know if you all saw the amount of money that was spent just before both Venezuela and Iran is disgusting. People who were insiders knew about that and bet on oil stocks and things like that. How we don't go after those people today is incredible. It's totally wrong, and I hope they do. And I hope if I'm in Congress, we'll be doing that. But I want to give you one real life example from Cape May, from being mayor. We have worked on a project for a seawall in our town, which is so vitally important to the survival of our town. I've worked on it for the last 8 years. We got it approved for $25 million through FEMA. It was ranked in the top 1% in the country of a project because of the value of what it protected and the cost. It has sat on Kristi Noem's desk now for over a year. And the reason it sat there is because we live in a blue state. And that is wrong. That is corruption. I think it's the same thing in the New York, New Jersey punt. And it reminds me of something, this is Bryce to Jeff Van Drew. It reminds me of a question someone asked President Biden when he passed the infrastructure bill. They asked, why is there more money going to red states than blue? His answer, because they needed more. That was his answer. Because that was someone who cared about need over corruption and politics. And that's what we need to get back to as a country. And I'll just finish that seawall story. I read an article, and you could look this up, in Fort Myers, Florida. Very similar situation. People were waiting for a FEMA grant to go through. It wasn't going through. Someone called Kristi Noem's largest donor, and within 2 weeks, the money was released. That is corruption, and that is what we need to end in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zack. Terri, 10 questions, please.
So yes, I believe 100% that money has corrupted our political system for the last 60 years, if not more. In the 2024, I'm a numbers girl, I'm a data girl, I like to do research. So in the 2024 elections, over $16 billion were spent on the federal races, including $4 billion in congressional races alone. So just imagine what that money could have been used for instead. That 8 million kids for a year, built 80 new VA clinics, ended veteran homelessness for a decade. So we had $16 billion to buy elections, but not enough to make sure that children don't go hungry. And that's not fiscal responsibility, it is moral advocacy. In our own district, in CE2, more than $4.5 million was spent in the 2024 lease. That same amount could provide 3,000 people with a year of mental health counseling, built 20 affordable homes, or fed 500 families for a year. I was in frontline politics directly. I signed the candidate and Terri pledge of the Money Out of Politics movement last July, and most recently, the U.S. term limits pledge in November. I support legislation to counteract or overturn Citizens United, and I understand what Tim said, that this can be done at the state level easier than at the federal level, and I support that 100%. I also believe we have to have publicly funded or financed elections, strict limits and full transparency on campaign spending, and aggressive enforcement for those who aren't following the rules. I also support small donor matching, banning lobbyist fundraising, closing the revolving door, ending dark money, and guaranteeing free media access so elections are not auctioned. Democracy must answer to the voters and not to the donors and not to special interests. I'm running the kind of campaign I want to go in with, one that's accountable and people-powered. And I believe if you talk the talk, you walk the walk. Anyone can say that they're going to do something when they go to Congress, but if they're not living by their stated goals and values now, how can you be sure that they will in your future? My campaign is 100% grassroots. I don't pay outside consultant or out-of-state consultants. All of my people are volunteers because they believe in the message, they believe in the values, they believe in what this campaign stands for.
Our funding is 100% grassroots as well. 75% comes from within small dollar donations from within the district. The other 25%, the vast majority comes from friends, family members, colleagues, former classmates that are all across the country now, and a small portion of social media followers. And we spend our money here in the district. I don't hire people from out of state. My bank is right down the street from my house, Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. I probably don't know, but a couple will suckers, eh? And we support small businesses here in South Jersey. If I have to spend outside, it's for the unfortunately necessary evils of boosting social media posts. But that's what we do, and that's how we'll feel.
Thank you very much, Terri. The final question that we have for the candidates before jumping onto audience questions concerns democratic politics of the federal level. There is growing frustration within the Democratic case about how party leadership in Congress has responded to this administration. Many feel that leadership hasn't done enough to meaningfully challenge executive overreach, particularly on issues like the war powers, and too much of the responses, it seems, to have been symbolic rather than substantive. On the war with Iran, polling shows overwhelming opposition among Democrats, while many in Congress have stopped short of aggressively using their authority to rein it in. At the same time, Republicans are advancing major funding packages for the war and for ICE, while proposing cuts to programs like SNAP, Medicare, and Medicaid. This raises broader questions about priorities and whether Democrats are fighting effectively enough in response. So the question for each of you: when Democrats leave the Congress, would you support Hakeem Jeffrey for Speaker? Why, or why not? And regardless of your answer, what would you have done differently if you had been minority leadership during the Trump administration, particularly in responding to the Iran conflict, protecting domestic programs, and using the full power of Congress to check the executive branch? Beginning with Tim, please.
So the question is, will I support Hakeem Jeffries? I gotta say no right now. You know, Hakeem came out with a slogan or saying response to some of Donald Trump's nonsense. Well, we can't swing at every ball that comes down. We gotta pick and choose. Then he doubled down on the next time, and he actually had a bat in his hand to illustrate what his point was. I disagree with that. I disagree. I think we swing at every single thing that he's come up with. When I was with another congressman at a forum, a sitting congressman, we talked about the Trump administration. We talked about Jeff Andrew. And one of the things I proposed was, hey, you know, why don't we put together a committee, ad hoc committee, which is also called a steering committee, to investigate the grift that Trump has done over the year, $1.4 billion just last year alone. And we can also investigate DHS on a criminal level for the criminal work that they have been doing on the streets, that being ICE. And let's go into a room, no windows, no TVs, no cameras. Let's do it for 2 years and come out. When we have a new Attorney General and we get to say, here's our findings, go get your indictments. Why don't we get prepared to do that? And the congressman said to me, I don't know why we're not doing that. I don't know why we didn't think of that. Because as minority leader, we could put that together. And so that's one of the first things I'm going to ask for when I get into Congress is to be a part of that. Because I have spent my 27 years in law enforcement investigating criminal activity such as Donald Trump. And remember, the Supreme Court said we can't go after him for things associated with his office. They left out the fact that anything not associated with his office, he can be prosecuted for. And that's exactly what I want to do with that $1.4 billion. By the way, come next year, I'm sure it's going to be closer to $2 billion in grift. The fake phones, the fake sneakers, the fake watches, the Bitcoin. This is all a worldwide embarrassment that we have a criminal, a convicted felon, running the White House, and we should be surprised that he's stealing and doing this crazy grift? No, we need to be together investigating it. And that's one of the things I pledge to do, is to do that, participate in that committee, and make that happen, so that when we get our blue tsunami in 28, we can pass it off to the Attorney General. So if Hakeem's down with that, maybe I'll give him a reprieve. But if he's not, I hope the next person steps up will be, and we'll make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Zach, the same question, please.
You know, I forget who it was that said, I'm not part of an organized political party, I'm a Democrat. And I think, you know, I'm reminded of this constantly as I'm running. And I love our Democrat because we have a full variety of opinions. And frankly, we're the figured 10th. But there's a lot of things that I think we could do better. I know you all heard. One of which is communication. I really think the Democrats have done an awful job of communicating their ideas, communicating the things that they've done. And I'll give you one example from Cape May. I'll go back to being there. We got more road projects done over the last few years because of the infrastructure bill than ever before in Cape May's history. We've removed literally every lead pipe. And we're an old town. We had a lot of old lead pipe. That's a big deal because that's not just going in the ground and getting lead pipe. That is redoing streets. That's redoing sewers. That's redoing water lines. These are all extremely important things that no one even knew about. So there was just no communication. And I'll give you one other example that I think of all the time. Cape May Harbor is obviously a big harbor for boating. It hadn't been dredged in decades. I mean, certain parts of it had, but the main part of the harbor had not been dredged in decades. Under Joe Biden's infrastructure bill, it was dredged. Boats could finally get into places that they had never been before. You know what all those boats had on them? Trump flags. And you know what? There were no signs anywhere that communicated the reason you are going right here is because of the infrastructure bills, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Democrats pushed through. We have to be better at communicating. So would I support Jeff Reese? Probably not, because I think we need new, fresh ideas. We need people who are going to really stand up against these endless wars, things like that. And I want to mention one of the things, I know this is the last question. We need to stand up for Social Security, and that wasn't mentioned yet. You know, the first half day of every Monday you dedicate, your entire working life goes towards Social Security. It's your money. And we have politicians who are raiding that treasury. We need to stop that. There's a $100 billion shortfall in Social Security right now. There's also $100 billion that is raised by FIRIS right now. That should help fund Social Security. And just lastly, very quickly, that cap may need to be increased for some of the ultra wealthy, okay? But also, most people who get Social Security get about $2,100 a month in a check. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says it costs $4,000 a month to live. So when you talk about affordability, we need to increase that. So to increase that, we need to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. Terri, same question for you.
So the first part was, would I support Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker? Well, all 435 seats are up, so you don't even know if he's going to be reelected, so you can't really say if you're going to support him or not. But frankly, I would support a dynamic Speaker of the House, because as I had said before, when I first announced last year that I was running, and I would tell people we need to like a really dynamic Speaker. One is a true leader that wants to affect real change, because once we do have our blue tsunami, we want to impeach the entire administration, get them all out of there, and then our Speaker will be from president. And people thought I had 6 heads when I said that, but I think that you dream big or you don't dream at all. Both sides, virtually honest, are paid by the same person and dark money. So as long as that happens, we're not going to have anything work in Congress. It's just going to continue to be this hamster wheel that we see the same important issues discussed every 2 years because they need something to run on, whether it's Iran, foreign policy, anything that happens like that. Executive branch has to be held accountable. One of the things I find most atrocious is when we see all of these hearings happening and the Trump administration officials are just browbeating the people on the panel that nobody bandied dabble and saying, you're in contempt, Sergeant of Arms, remove them. Like, they just let it go on for TV and soundbite, and it's ridiculous. We're really talking about domestic policies. That's what's most important to me. And as Zach had mentioned, Social Security, which is very near and dear for my heart. We need to start passing legislation that actually helps people in the long term And as I said, instead of this dysfunction that is for sound bites and things you can roll on every 2 years, Social Security is the perfect example. Just a couple weeks ago, they lifted this payroll the cap by $5,500. It was $179,000 that you paid on, and they lifted it to 184.5.
You have the opportunity to just lift the cap, period, and then not have to worry about it, and then you don't, and then put a button or put a note in your calendar, we're gonna readdress it in 60 years, which is like, look at it later. Why do we have to just piecemeal things? And that's the thing that they did. You need to identify an issue, come up with viable solutions that'll stand the test of time and move forward, instead of constantly rehashing the same things over and over again. I'm a huge fan of The West Wing. I think it's one of the best written television shows that's ever happened. But if you watch it today, you feel like you're in the Twilight Zone, because they're talking about the same things they're talking about now, and that needs to end.
Thank you very, very much, Terri. Bailey, same question, please.
Well, Democratic Party leadership needs to step up and do better. Needs to take risk, needs to move on from some of the generic status quo attitudes that have gotten us to this place. If you're a Democrat in power right now, in an elected position, and you're not taking risks, you're not trying new things, I don't think you're doing right by this country. I don't think you're doing right by the party. Mr. Jeffries would have to do better to show why he deserves support for Speaker of the House than how he has acted up until right now. And this is the party of working families. This party is better for nurses, for union members, for veterans, for teachers. Half the time, it is a snooze fest when you see messaging from party leadership, and that is a problem. So you cannot copy and paste in the same old playbook and expect a new outcome. You have to earn it. You have to reach voters where they are. Last 2 days, I went to 2 different college campuses, talked with students. They don't think politics has any place for them. They don't feel like they have a seat at the tables. They need to get that feeling made clear to them by the party, and right now that is not happening. So if the baton is not passed shortly, I don't know what's gonna happen, but enough is enough. People have been in public service for a while, good for them, I congratulate them, but it is time to shake things up. Look at the Epstein files. If you're a Democrat in the Epstein files, you should be held fully accountable. This is not partisan. Sometimes it feels like it is. The Democratic Party suppressed a report that looked at why there were failures last cycle and didn't even publish it. Why not? Publish it and learn from it. That's a bad look. And there are some senior Democratic officials who suppressed a law that could have banned individual stock trading. Well, if you're gonna be an anti-corruption party, actually be the damn anti-corruption party. Don't just say it. I do think coming out of all this, we can recognize politics is broken. Actually, I'll give Trump credit for one thing. He recognized that working families were failed by politics, and he spoke to that. He doesn't stand for working families, but he saw that issue correctly, and that's on both parties. I talked recently with a union member, and he told me, I don't trust Democratic or Republican politicians. I don't blame him. I get it. That's part of why I'm running as a first-time candidate, because we need to do better, and we need folks in politics who come from diverse backgrounds, who don't just work their way up the political ladder through the political machine. That is what got us to exactly where we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terri. Very well done, candidates. For the remainder of the evening, we are going to refer to questions from the audience. Barb and Kathy have prepared a few for us, and in the interest of time, we're going to allow 2 minutes to respond to each question. Barb, Kathy, if you will.
Right. Zack, this question goes to you first. All right. If elected to Congress, what will you do to protect our troops, to better serve our veterans, and to support military families?
It's a great question. Well, first thing, we're not going to be sending them to these terrible wars. And that obviously gets to the war power back and using our power to make sure they're not going to these senseless wars. And because, like I said earlier, my father served in the Army, and growing up in a military household, he was taught how important it is to make sure that these decisions that we make as politicians, I never want to have to send someone's child into war. I'll tell you, the hardest thing I ever had to do that has anything even remotely close to this as mayor was we had a lifeguard who was a 16-year-old child who died in Vietnam. And I had to go see their parents and talk to them. Something, never expect that. So as a congressperson, that is something that I would take as the most serious portion of my job, taking care of veterans. I have spoken to so many veterans throughout this campaign now, and what Jeff Andrew is doing, leaving them behind, is disgusting. When it comes to, and it boils, what do they ask for? That's the question. What they ask for is medical care. They're asking for help from the injuries that they received serving our country. They're not asking for checks in the mail. They're asking for medical care. So, and transportation, I will say, is one thing I also get a lot of. So those are two extremely simple things that we can solve. And one of which, of course, is through the VA. So funding the VA and making sure that we take care of our veterans is absolutely at the top of my priority. Thank you.
Same question? Like Zach, I agree that we protect our troops by not putting them in wars that do nothing but line the pockets of the investors and the military industrial complex. Supporting our veterans with robust health care, absolutely robust health care, and helping their families by ensuring that our veterans are paid equitably. Right now, we have veterans who are on food stamps because they're not paid well enough to afford to buy food on what their rate is. And that's a disgrace. So as I said, keep them out of wars, work with diplomacy, supporting our veterans with the health care that they need, including mental health care, looking at the veteran homeless rate and the veteran suicide rate as well to make sure they get the support they need, and Housing First initiatives, and supporting their families with assistance they need, but more importantly, paying them what they deserve.
Well, war should be the absolute last resort to the U.S. Right now, with Iraq, it's the exact opposite. It is Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth saying, we're going to start with this and then figure out the rest later. And what's happening right now with troops being deployed to the Middle East, it does not look like de-escalation. It does not look like a war that's going to end tomorrow. It looks like it is only going to get longer, more expensive, and more deadly. So yes, Congress needs to do its job and make it clear you do not get funding until you have accountability and transparency and a clear justification. The Trump administration said the Iran war was a preemptive strike. Where was the imminent threat? I don't see one. I don't know if any of you do. It's a lie, plain and simple. The VA has been screwed over by Jeff Andrews' policies, and Jeff Andrew has the nerve to look veterans in the eye and say he stands with them. Look at his voting record. Because when you're in Congress, your power is in how you vote and what you vote for, yes and no. And veterans across South Jersey are having to travel hours for basic care, are not getting the support they need, and that is totally unacceptable. And there has to be comprehensive reform across mental health, including issues with suicide rates that are staggering compared to the normal population. And I think there are more opportunities with career development that we are not taking advantage of. Veterans have incredible skills that are really specific that can be used in a lot of different ways. So there could be more investment there that can actually lead to long-term sustainability for them and their families. And that is not being done well enough right now. The best way to respect our troops is by not putting them in harm's way in the first place unless it is absolutely necessary, And that is one of the biggest failures of this administration and of Jeff Van Drew's legacy. Thank you.
When we talk about our troops, we have to recognize that the current administration looks at them as disposable. They don't have any kind of connection to or empathy or sympathy for, and they certainly don't understand the warrior mentality. They just want to put them out there and use them as they want. You know, our spending in the military budget, and Zach's right, we talked about this a few weeks ago, is just unbelievably bad. Where we're spending over $1 trillion on an airplane that don't fly. Meanwhile, we have troops, I think the New York Times did a study, over 100,000 that are on welfare or eligible for welfare. You're serving for our military and you need public assistance? That is a major priorities problem. So we need to shift the spending towards the troops on the ground that's doing the hard work, making sure that when they come back, they have resources. Veteran homelessness is insane in this country. I proposed a couple of years ago, and I stand by it, a tiny village project next to military bases, so that veterans can go there. They're not on the base, they're not subject to the rules of the base, but then if they need something from the PX or they need to see a doctor, they can go right over and get the care they need. But they need to have their independence, and we can help them with this. We can help them get situated after addiction. We can help them get situated after dealing with mental health crises. But we don't prioritize our veterans. We don't prioritize our troops. So, and as far as the families go, I don't even think we ever had a conversation about helping the families deal with a lot of these things. So for me, all these issues are top priorities. And we can do this. This is like nothing that I've heard, or as far as questions, that's impossible. We can't do it. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we should do it, and we have the resources to do it. We got to get our head out of the you-know-what and look at what we're actually doing to our country. Instead of worrying about defense contractors, we need to be worried about our troops. Thank you.
All right, next question goes to Terri first. Ocean County is the only county in New Jersey without a permanent homeless shelter. How will you work towards providing housing for the homeless?
Thanks, Bud. I'm a proponent of Housing First initiatives. As I mentioned earlier today, that over 1/4 of the housing in our district is vacant. And that doesn't include different industrial areas as well. One of the things I was talking to somebody about the other day was a place that was zoned industrial that they were going to go to a warehouse on, or they were thinking of putting a data center on it. We don't need another warehouse, we don't need another data center. We need affordable housing and homeless first initiatives to take care of people who are homeless on the street. I know we talked specifically about Ocean County, but you know, in Atlantic County, you drive into Atlantic City, you see 2 vacant towers from casinos that are no longer open that could be repurposed for supporting the homeless. And I'm sure that there are areas for businesses around here that have closed that something could be similar or be done similarly as well. But with those Housing First initiatives, providing healthcare, mental health care, substance abuse care, and workforce programs as well in order to give them a path to move forward.
Well, part of it is pushing for federal funding and using the power of legislation in a way Jeff Van Drew has not. Jeff Van Drew doesn't get much done at all, actually. He's gotten 2 bills that he originated, and they were to change the names of post office buildings. So that's his legacy. I think we do a lot better than that. There also needs to be a comprehensive approach to these issues. So I think when you think about homelessness, for instance, it's not just about housing, it's also about counseling, it's also about career development, it's also about our criminal justice system, addiction services, education. So there needs to be a holistic approach to thinking about that. Doing more listening, not just talking. I think DC-led government can be very dangerous when you have folks like Jeff Van Drew who don't even do town halls, because you don't actually get to hear from the folks who are experiencing these challenges, firsthand or second. So there needs to be a stronger feedback loop as well in that respect. And I think public-private partnerships can help here too. The government alone can only do so much, and often it doesn't do much at all, actually. But private companies can actually provide support when it comes to things like this if there's the right kind of partnerships that allow for a mutually beneficial approach. Companies want to invest in their communities in some cases as well, and this could be a really good opportunity to push for that. Thank you.
So it requires a relationship with the community. And let's do a quick revision here. Jeff's out. Now I'm your congressman. And I found a pool of money that I could bring in for addressing a homeless shelter in this community. I come back with pockets full of cash and I say, hey, we're ready to do this. And every community we go to, and they say, we need this, but not in my backyard. We have to make sure that we're planning this appropriately with the communities, that we have the resources to do it, and we do, that we are not trampling over somebody, we're not ignoring their concerns, but on the same token, they're recognizing that we have to do this. And if not now, when? And if not here, where? Because if we don't do it, we don't take that approach of working with our community, taking that money right back to Washington because we won't be able to spend it. So I like the idea of doing a homeless shelter here in Ocean County, and that was the question. But the way we do it is we make sure we're sound with the citizens. We do it by town halls. We make sure that we meet with people. Here, this is the proposal, by the way, that comes from the county. The county secures the property. The county comes up with the plans. Our job is to bring the bacon home and make it happen. But we're not going to succeed if we do not work with our partnerships in the community. I don't need the full 2 minutes on this one. Thank you.
Cape May County actually doesn't have a homeless shelter either. So I'm very familiar with this issue. And it's, I see someone from Cape May shaking their head right now. And I think that someone helps volunteer in some areas where private industry is taking a step forward. But we can't rely on that. And it's really unfortunate that, by the way, mention one other thing in regards to that. We have a food closet in Cape May. It is the busiest business in Cape May. And one of the reasons is we have government officials that work on the Coast Guard base that are still going unpaid right now. They are going to the Cape May food cart, as an aside. I mentioned housing red tape. I've experienced it. It really is a killer toward progress. We need that. We need to take care of that. We've mentioned hedge funds buying up thousands of properties. That needs to stop. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and it is an important one, is Airbnb and VRBOs. They need to be taxed. If they're in your communities and they're not paying taxes, they are using all of your tax money for the roads, for the police officers, for police and fire. It's a smaller issue, but it's something that needs to be taken care of locally. I just mentioned I think we need to work on the federal level with local municipalities. Many counties have the same issue of empty properties that are going unused. That's ridiculous. We need federal money to help with local municipalities. Lastly, I'll mention this, and I'll get to the homeless in 1 second. The average age for a first-time home buyer now is 40 years old plus. That is absurd. We need to take drastic action on housing in the United States. And again, I'll say this one more time. After the Great Depression, we built millions of homes. It created millions of jobs. And no, it didn't create communists who bought those houses. It created the middle class. We can do it again.
So we have one more question. We know it's been a long night. Bailey, this is for you up first. What one thing would you like to say that you haven't been asked yet and that is not in your campaign literature?
What a great question to be first up for. Thank you. Let me think about that. One thing that's important, I think, for me to share is that I've spent time primarily in the public side of it, in public service. I also got an MBA, worked at a small district, and I think that is important because most people in this district, in this country, are not feds, right? So if you've never worked in a business, it's hard for you to relate to that. And working for a small business with a CEO in the technology sector, it allowed me to see some of what the changes we need when it comes to bureaucracy, when it comes to innovation, when it comes to job creation. Because we talk about cost of living, But there's the other side of that, which is strong employment for this district, for the future. A lot of the students I spoke to in the past 2 days, they don't necessarily see a path to job growth staying in this area. So that needs to be provided, and we need to be a pro-business party. I think one of the challenges is that there's this conception that Republicans are the party of business. I don't buy that, but there is work to be done there. I'm pro-business, I'm pro-responsible business, and I believe there's a way to build towards that, and I've had the privilege of having some experience in that department, which I hope to build on. Thank you.
I wish we were asked tonight, where are you from, and what is your connection to this community? Because I think that's important if someone wants to step up and be your representative, that they are part of your community. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. My parents separated. We lived in a few other spots. My mom was a single mom at that point, and we landed in first Port Norris, New Jersey. Don't ask. And then we moved over to Vineland, New Jersey, where I went to junior high school, which was 7th and 8th grade, and then I went to high school. I met my wife there. She's from Salem County, lived on a farm all her life. My first law enforcement job was in Cumberland County, where I worked for the Sheriff's Department, and if you see me wear those Stetsons, that's where it started. That's part of our uniform. So I have roots here. My children are born here. This is my community. I stay in my community. I go to Salem County. My law office was there for 5 years. I go over to Cumberland County because we have family there and we have a lot of friends there. Come to Ocean County. I have friends here, and I have people who are concerned about their community. Cape May County, down in Whitesboro, I'm always there. Atlantic County, of course, that's where I lived. So, and I worked there for 23 years of my 27 years in law enforcement. This is about community first. It's about having a representative who understands, who walked the walk, who talked to the people and understand and has roots here and always have and always will. I think that's extremely important. I wish that was asked tonight. With that, I want to thank you for, I believe this is the last question, so I want to thank you for your time and attention.
Tim, I'm going to answer your question. Lay it on. I'm born and raised in South Jersey and Cape May, so thank you. I'll tell you, the question I wish was asked revolves about why I got into this elections. About 3 months ago, I had a meeting with Jeff Andrews. I went down to DC, met in his office. I'll just give you a quick background. For many years, we supported Jeff Andrew when he was a Democrat. Held many, campaign fundraisers for him. And when he turned Republican, I was mayor of Cape May. I kept a good relationship with our Congress because I needed to on behalf of my community. The meeting I had was on beef replenishment with all Cape May mayors, Cape May County mayors, so of course I was the only Democrat. And I could not believe what he was saying among colleagues in a closed door meeting. I was just blown away. And it shocked me to the point that I thought, I cannot believe that this is how our government is functioning. So I decided to jump in the race. But I'll tell you, that's it. My issue was it wasn't honest. Honesty and integrity has to be paramount in government. And that includes up here. That includes Democrats. And I think what I wish was asked tonight, and I'll go to Bachelor Terri for this, is who challenged Terri's bout? She spent 10 hours in court a couple days ago to just be up here at this table. And I think it's wrong. And I think it was a candidate that failed.
Right, well, thank you all for all. Terri. Okay, Terri, may you please answer? Okay, so I believe the question was something that I would like to say that isn't on my,
That hasn't been said tonight and isn't in your literature.
Excellent. Okay, very good. So one of the things we didn't talk about tonight and is in the literature is what do you do if you don't win the campaign, or if you don't win the primary? And my answer would be I would support the person who did. Okay. I think that's really, really important that we say unity as a party and that we support the candidate who does win the primary, even though I know it's going to be me. But anyway, The other thing too is that it's not only, like, yes, as congressman or when you're, at the federal level, there's so much that you can do for your areas, but what's even more important is that we need to support our down ballot candidates as well. Because those are the people who are making decisions that affect our daily lives and our communities, our schools, our housing, our local infrastructure, public safety. And we need to make sure we have our strong local leaders who are boots on the ground in our communities so that they can have partnerships with the federal official so that South Jersey gets all the resources that they need. Because if we want real, long-lasting, positive change, we need to make sure we're electing leaders at every level who share the same values and are committed to moving our communities forward and making life better for everybody. So, thank you.
Kid two, good. Thank you all for all of your responses, and I'm going to pass this back to Gabe.
Thank you very much, Barb and Cafe, and thank you to all of our candidates. Thank you for topping it out for us. We're almost done, I promise. I just do want to give the candidates one opportunity, take 3 minutes to just give their closing remarks. And on the back wall there's a poster with a QR code next to each of their faces. That will take you right to the websites. So I guess we'll follow the same order as we began with. So Terri, if you would.
Okay, thank you. So,
Feel free to take the if you like also. Whatever you prefer.
So again, thank you all for having me today. I know that this was a really long night, but this race isn't about titles or resumes. It's about who will fight for the people who make South Jersey home. I'm running because I know the struggles of the families who are choosing between groceries and prescriptions, and I know what is facing the caregivers who are trying to hold everything together for their aging parents. I know how the workers feel who haven't had a raise in years, and I know them because I've lived those very same experiences. I'm also a voter, and I'm a citizen who has been watching politics very carefully. People are sick of the money, they're sick of the corruption, they're sick of the political games, and I'm running to prove they're a regular South Jersey woman, backed by people and not power brokers, can take on the system and win, and I proved that on Monday. We deserve a representative who understands, thank you, affordability, not from a spreadsheet, not from policy papers, but from struggling to make ends meet, someone who knows that people come first. Somebody who knows our coastline, our farmlands, and our future depend on real climate action and responsible investment. We can flip this district, but we need to do something different and something bold. We need to elect someone who is different from the usual candidates. And my campaign is people-powered, not corporate-funded. It's rooted in integrity and not influence. And it's built on the idea that everyday people, not just the well-connected, deserve a seat in Congress. South Jersey's worth fighting for. And when I'm elected, I'm going to fight to build a fairer, stronger, more affordable, and sustainable future for all of us who call it home. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. We might be breaking curfew here, but I'm glad we're doing it together. And the thing that has surprised me most on the campaign trail, and I launched my campaign at the end of June, is the fact that I have been met with so little hostility because people are hungry in this moment for a real conversation. The partisan nature of politics is out of control at the White House. It's out of control in the media. At the people-to-people level, it's a different story. And I try my best to go to uncomfortable places, not just Dem clubs, places where people do not want to see a Democratic candidate, because a lot of them do want to be heard. And they are willing to listen if you approach them in the right way. And I'll tell you a story. For an event we did, we sent out a mass text, and everyone likes getting a text from a campaign, right? So, yeah. One woman responded by text very colorfully. Her language was a little bit spicy. And I gave her a call. She answered the phone and she basically cursed me out and said, "Why are you calling me? I don't want to talk to you." I asked her, "What matters to you?" And I shared a bit about my background, and by the end of the call she said, "Let me know when your next town hall is, I want to be there." That tells me something about this moment, about what we can achieve with the right energy, the right commitment, the right drive. And I'm not just here to have conversations, I'm here to ask the tough questions of elected officials and hold those in power accountable. With the data center in Vineland, I didn't just go to one meeting. I went to multiple city council meetings, asked a question about a conflict of interest, and the city council president threatened to sue me for slander, for asking a question. He said, "I won't win the case, but you'll pay," which is Trump language, it's mob film language. That is not public service. What that shows me is we need to keep asking these questions. I will ask those same questions for the issues that matter most to you here in Ocean County. And by the way, we got Jeff Andrews' attention on this as well, because I've been calling him out for taking money from the developer of this project, and Jeff Andrew and his team attacked me. What that shows me is that this is an issue that scares them, and I am a candidate that scares Jeff. So yes, I will continue to bring the cardboard cutout with me when I go around on the campaign trail. My career has been defined by public service. I have been in the room where decisions are made. I was the advisor to the head of a $40 billion agency in my last job. I will take that experience to fight for you. And I can hit the ground running in Congress because I already know what the stakes are there. This Iran issue, I'm an Iran expert from my time at the State Department, and I will pound the pavement across this district to make sure that I am rooted in this community, and I so look forward to talking with you more. I hope to earn your support. Thank you so much.
So thank you all for being out here and giving us your time and attention. I did it earlier, but I want to do it formally now. I am a trial attorney. I was a former prosecutor, assistant district attorney for the city of Philadelphia, before I went to work for the city solicitor's office where I defended civil rights matters. And then I jumped the ship and I became a civil rights plaintiff's attorney. I know how to advocate my case. I know how to advocate for my client. You put me in this office, you all become my client. I know how to argue. I know how to use the evidence to make another group of people find that what I'm putting before them is meaningful, and it should result in meaningful outcomes. That's what I do. I spent my whole legal career as a trial attorney. So why does that matter? Because we have to convince, and whoever goes up to Congress, you have to convince your colleagues, first in your caucuses, and then in committees, and then on the floor to agree with you. It helps when you have other people working with you, but the bottom line is it starts with you, with ideas. Those ideas come from everybody in this room and some. And then I take them back and I advocate for you. It's not what Tim Alexander wants out of Congress, it's what you want out of Congress. And I'm gonna end with this. Anybody who starts out lying to you, misleading you, like Jeff did, remember that guy? They should not be up here. They should not be trying to become your congressperson because they're already on bad footing. Every single thing you try to do when you're running for office comes out. Believe me, I've been doing this since my third time. Got very few secrets left. They come out. And what's worse is that it comes out now is going to come out when Jeff is up against the winner of the primary, and now we're in trouble. So I want you to do your homework. I'm pushing hard on that. Do your homework, scratch the lie, and find your truth. With that, I want to thank you again. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to the fight. The gloves are off with Jeff. We're going to use his own words, his own deeds, his own videos, such as the time he appeared on Maria Barcelona and said, oh, we're going to get creamed in the midterms because our stance on health care. We've already made a commercial out of that. Now today, he says, oh, well, you may have to get a second job because things are more expensive. We're working on that commercial. The bottom line is, Jeff is the best gift because he gives us words right out of his own mouth. We don't have to embellish it. All we got to do is republish it. So thank you all, and have a great night, and be safe at home.
Okay, I'm going to do it right from here. My stat's going to say, you didn't look as congressional because you sat there. That's okay, because you can get to the door a little bit quicker. I just want to thank everyone who put this on. I have to say, this was the most well-run at least in a tie for the best. So I won't make anybody else feel bad, but great job putting this all together. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, great job. Thank you. I'm going to end with a quick exercise. Do you want to support Social Security?
Oh, boy.
All right. Do you want to end endless wars? Do you want affordable health care? Then we got to beat Jeff Van Drew. And that's what I started with, and that's what I'm going to end with. We have to beat Jeff. And to do that, you got to look at the numbers, and we'll do them really quick. Listen, as much as we all get excited, we all agreed with everything that was set up here tonight, for the most part, right? Most of the candidates agreed. But nothing matters if we don't beat them. We have to beat them. And you look at the numbers of the recent elections, they're not good. They're not good. 19, 17-point losses. Those are bad losses. So, but it's the reality that we face. Now, leaving you on a good note, though, because how did Jeff win? He won as a Democrat. It can be done. Look at what Mikey Sherrill did, our governor. She got it within 5 points in CDQ. And she did that without a lot of campaigning in this area. She did a great job. We all know that. And, you know, God bless how exactly she did it, because she did a great job. But she didn't do a ton of campaigning in this area. We can beat Jeff Van Drew. So I ask you for your vote, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, candidates. Thank you, everyone, for attending. The candidates will be here for a couple more minutes if you want to pick their brains or push them in any way. And for those of you who are local, we hope to see you same time, same place next month. Have a good night, everyone, and a very happy Easter. Stay travel.